All right. I decided to make a more down-to-earth recording. What's this? Because on the inside, I'm completely going nuts. And that's the effect, partly, that coffee has on you. So yeah, like my go-to, that's what I like to give you, this kind of experience of all the facets that a human can have. You know, that's one of them. And that is, to my experience, what coffee can do to you, and what all these rigid expectations that we push on one another can have on us as human feeling beings. And sometimes we just need to let that all out. And then we have to scream like a chimpanzee and just do something with all that raw emotional power that we have inside of us. And now I could have certainly made a recording, and I could have released it as one of my P.p.p.s episodes. But I decided, I made an active decision, a conscious decision to do a live recording. Well, one reason is comfort. One reason certainly is comfort. Because despite my feeling of, boom, I want to be all out there, I also feel like, I tried writing, it doesn't work. I tried writing, it just doesn't work. Writing at the moment just doesn't work. Because there's too much. It's too much stuff happening. Do I want to wear this? Yeah, maybe. Right? There's... Nah, not really. I want to wear this. There's too much happening at the same time within me. And one of the things that brings that about is coffee. So coffee is making me feel everywhere. And, well, the subject of this, because I have the feeling, I'm all over the place. If somebody would barge into this place and would find me screaming like a chimpanzee, like I showed you in Stiff as a what? He'd probably just leave. What? In that sense, you could say, does that have to be my concern? Well, to a certain degree, probably. Because maybe you're trying to get a message across. Maybe you're trying to show people what you've learned. And if I'm just channeling madness into your faces, then I don't give you the chance to relearn much. But what I have learned is, I can let it all out in one insane kind of thing. But I can also do it like this, right? I can sit down and I can be relaxed about talking. But I can also be quite intense, right? I can really engage with the camera and I can be right in your face. But I can also sit here and have a somewhat normal conversation about sexism. So, sexism, and maybe it is appropriate, see how eloquent I can articulate myself, right? I have the feeling it is appropriate to make an attempt to define sexism. It's just to me always astonishing how many facets you can have as a human being. Like, I can be literally chimpanzee guy throwing shit at you, and I can be this kind of really settled guy who just sits here and has no problem to let his mind wander into whatever direction it wants to take. And that to me is what I consider to be freedom. Now, sexism, sex, right? We always say sexist. You're sexist. It's sexism. It's basically to judge a person according to their gender. And I believe that everybody does that. Right? And I picked it up from within the family. Right? I mean, parents do it. Everybody does it. You know, some men are more open towards women and more closed towards men. And some women are more open towards men and more closed towards women. That is depending. So everybody, or not everybody, but most people are to a certain degree sexist. And some people think other people are sexist simply because they're vulnerable, right? So if you like a guy and he ignores you, you might say he's sexist. And that's just your opinion. But if I'm the same way towards men and women, then how can you call me sexist? Because if I'm the same way towards men and women, then you cannot call me sexist, because that's equality. You know, if I treat everybody the same, then that's equality, right? So if you annoy me, you know, I don't care if you're a man or a woman, then I'm going to tell you to leave me alone. And I think from a male perspective, I have the feeling that a lot of women are used to being treated like princesses. A lot of women are used to getting what they want from men because they have cleavage. Not all women. Just the women that lower themselves to using, flirting, or their bodies to manipulate men into giving them what they want. And then there's women, you know, the women you would say are a bit gullible. I've watched that movie Liar Liar, it's just parts of it, until I simply couldn't take it anymore. But I did watch it to a certain degree, and it just comes up this scene where I was standing here and I was just going completely mental, and you know, this transition is just really interesting. But yeah, that's just how it is, you know. I just have to deal with that I have, you know, all kind of facets. It's for me just a very interesting observation to realize, you know, I can just switch, right? I can go completely nuts and throw a tantrum, and then I turn around and I'm like this. Oh yeah. I don't know what's better. Nothing is ever better. So what you can do to realize whether or not you're sexist, so I would describe the term sexism generally as a predisposition towards one gender. So if you're sexist, that means you either prefer men or you prefer women. And it doesn't matter which gender you come from. So when you're a man, right, like I said, you can either prefer men or women. And so the question, if you have a problem with people who are sexist, that means you're sexist. If you have a man around you and that man is somewhat disrespectful towards women and you hate that man, well, then you've got something to work with. Because he just shows you, you want to be loved by him. But he treats you like an ass. So you have to ask yourself, why do you want to be loved by him? And why don't you want to be loved by other women? Because you could say that's kind of sexist, right? It's like sexism. You want to be loved by men, but not by women. So you want to love men, but with women it's a bit of a different relationship. So aren't we all a little bit sexist? Because men are, in a way, in this kind of society, somewhat clinging to being accepted by... see, you cannot generalize ever. There's men that want to be acknowledged by women, and there's men that want to be acknowledged by men. And then there's women that want to be acknowledged by women, and then there's women that want to be acknowledged by men. See, there's all kinds of different relationships, and then there's just people who generally want to be acknowledged. Maybe that's the person I count to, but I don't actually think so, because what my goal is to simply acknowledge myself. But certainly I do hope that me acknowledging myself and my own needs and phrasing and expressing them in such a very eloquent way, and now I think I really have to take this serious. But I have a real problem to take this serious, because it's not that I don't take myself serious, but it's just I don't take any of this serious. It's very hard to take anything serious these days, because nobody's serious about anything. We're not really serious about doing a good job, about being humans. We're not really being serious about anything. All we are serious about is being vulnerable and miserable and angry and afraid. That's what we're really serious about. We're serious about making money, and we're willing to do that at the cost of everything. So for me, it's very hard to sit down here and talk about nonsense like sexism, while that's just an expression of having nothing better to do than to complain all day. Because you can sit around and you can complain about, I'm not being appreciated as a man, I'm not being appreciated as a woman, and that man is a real sexist. And that's just projection. You're angry at men, and so you try to let it out on them. So, am I supposed to sit here and take something like sexism serious? That's the same thing as transgender. Sorry, I cannot take that serious because it's just a joke. To me, all of this stuff that people do to make themselves feel better, to me, is simply a joke. But in a sense, it is a very serious joke, because people have all kinds of problems. People are really angry. But you see, when I get angry, I'm not so full of myself that I take myself seriously. When I get angry, I can look at myself being angry, and then I can actually laugh at myself from within myself. While most people that I meet that get angry, they are so serious about getting angry, that they can never step back from that. They just think they have to be angry all the time. And that's, to me, roughly what sexism is. You think you have a right to be angry at men, or you think you have a right to be angry at women, no matter from which part of the coin you come from. But you don't have the right to be angry at anyone, because you don't have the right to project your anger onto me. What gives you the right to project your anger at men, at me? Because that's what feminists do. They are angry because they've been mistreated. But that's not true. Because the reason they're angry is actually because they allowed men to mistreat them. And now they want men to take the blame for their own faults, for their own weaknesses. Now it's men that should take the blame and say, oh, I'm so sorry. Or it's men that are really angry at women, and now they want women to take the blame for it. What really makes me, or what I cannot stand, is that if you try, let's say you have an argument with a woman, right? And you shout and you make yourself heard or something. Or maybe you're afraid or whatever. And then you go to that woman later, now she gives you the silent treatment. And the woman thinks she's in the right. She doesn't even think about why you said what you said. All she thinks is, I'm in the right and he have to suck up to me now. That's how a lot of women are. They run around, like I said, with their ears in their nose. And, if they spend time with their friends, with other men or other women, they're super happy. But if I come around the corner, it's like, they just think they have to be angry at me. Why? I don't call that sexism. I just call that judgmental. We all talk about equality, but you don't treat me like an equal. If you treat another person different than you treat me, I don't call that sexism. I just call that judgmental. Because you judge me. But now we have to understand why we judge each other. Well, judgment is always an expression of fear. You are uncertain, so you judge. Well, if I know where I stand, I literally don't have to judge anybody. If I'm certain where I stand is a good place, and I like where I stand, and I hold my space, and I feel good here, I feel good sitting here, then I don't have to be uncertain about sitting here. And that means when I approach a woman and I say something to her and she just says nothing to it, well, she's probably uncertain. She doesn't know what to say. And then in her mind, I'm the asshole, and that's why she doesn't say something. But the truth is that she is afraid to say something, because she probably thinks about what she can say. And I know how that feels because I've been there. I've been there myself in many, many situations. I've been there myself. And, well, usually it's a form of miscommunication, surely. It's a form of miscommunication. Where I want my opposite to say something or to give me the feeling that I'm being understood. But if my opposite doesn't understand him or herself, then how am I supposed to, you have to understand yourself first. But if you're running around accusing people of being sexist, then you don't understand what you're doing. Then you have no idea what you're doing. You see, you cannot come here into this space and have your little tantrums justified. And I think that's what people want, right? They want, when they're angry, they just look for reasons that justify their anger. Because they hold on to their anger because it makes them feel powerful. But it's actually a sign of weakness. It's a sign of weakness. Because you are actually afraid. And that's why you're angry, right? So if you go around calling men sexist, what it actually shows is that you want to be loved by men. And what that shows is that you have trouble loving yourself because you need men to love you. I mean, it's a very simple, it makes absolute sense if you sit long enough with it and think about what sexism is. and what the source, because we always have to look at the source, right? We don't want to do what modern medicine is doing and just treat symptoms. No, we want to look at the source of the root, because that's how you deal with problems, right? And that's the same thing with climate change. Introducing electric cars is a way to introduce more problems, and to solve climate change would be to plant more trees to make sure that we have enough forests. So to deal with a group of people, that ride on the back of sexism, and they put great meaning into that word, and just, anything anybody does, you're just a sexist asshole, right? That's like the mindset these people have. They are stuck in the belief that all men are assholes, and they don't even understand how they contribute to this kind of idea. They keep recreating their beliefs in the men that they meet. And then they think, it's like you're wearing glasses, and the glasses project a certain image onto the world. Now the glasses could also be seen as a kind of a filter. And the filter is basically your trauma. So you see the world and everybody you meet in there through the filter of your trauma. And that filter filters out everything that does not justify you. You want to be seen and to be heard and to be felt. So your trauma is maybe your father has left you as a young child. And that has manifested the belief that all men are assholes. So when you walk through life, that's kind of the mentality you have. That's the filter that you use. But it's not really a filter, it's like a projection, right? You project your trauma onto everyone you meet. So if you go around and you say, men are sexist, then that's a very sexist thing to do. Because you lump men together as being sexist, and whatever a man does, to you, it's always, he's sexist. He's a sexist, he's a chauvinist. So a man wants to open the door for you and you say, you're an asshole. I'm just trying to treat women with respect. Yeah, that's not how you do it. Well, can I carry your bags then? No, I want to carry my own bags. So literally, I can't do anything for the woman that I want to be with, right? I cannot be nice to her. So basically, to satisfy her image that she has of men, I actually have to be an asshole. But now if I don't want to be an asshole, she's gonna try to get me to be an asshole by being an asshole herself. This is how it is. That's what feminism is all about. They think men are really terrible, and then they become really terrible, and they just start attacking men. So they turn into what they thought men to be, just to prove their point. Because you can be as nasty as you want to be to me, to make me become real nasty in my turn. And what that then shows is that you were right, because in your story, now you showed me, because now you shouted at me, that just shows, you prove my point, you're an asshole as well. But you made me shout. Of course, nobody can make anybody do anything, but you got me to the point where I actually wanted to shout at you, or had to shout, or where I simply said, you know what, I'm just gonna shout at you now. And then, you can run away and tell everybody I'm an asshole. I'm gonna give you that, because that's apparently what you wanted. You wanted that I show you my worst side, because you triggered me by suggesting an open relationship. You know, you did that on purpose because you wanted to satisfy your need for me being an asshole. And so you worked real hard to catch me at that. So don't talk to me about sexism, because sexism, to me, doesn't exist. It's just people trying to recreate their beliefs and their trauma and their fears in the people that they meet. And if you have certain traumatic experiences with men, then you're trying to prove to yourself over and over that all men are wrong because you failed to open up to men. And the opposite is true for women, right? If I have traumatic experiences with women, then I will walk around and I will try to recreate these things by taking a certain position towards them, right? You know, there's like a man and I can stand around like this, you know, towards other women. I can be like this. Yeah, and sure, I mean, they're not gonna really be nice to me if I'm like this. Unless, of course, I as a man see a woman who's like this. But I can see who's hiding in there. I can see that actually she wants to be loved, but she's afraid to be loved. So she's just gonna make it extra hard for anyone to love her. So yeah, there's no such thing as sexism, because sexism is just a word. It's projection. It's just men projecting on a women and women projecting onto men, and then there's men that project onto men and women that project onto women. I mean, we're basically all doing it to each other. So in the end, what it is projection. You have a lot of anger in yourself and you just find a certain group of people, and sometimes it's an individual, to project all your anger onto, because you feel misunderstood, and instead of acknowledging simply that you're angry, you know, you want somebody to be at fault. So the way out of this is by taking responsibility for the way you feel and working with those emotions, sitting with them, feeling them, bringing them onto a page, working them out of yourself through physical exercise, feeling the anger and transforming it into something else, you know, looking at the anger and then simply letting it slide. So what most people do in this society is they are angry simply because they are angry, and they just look for an outlet. So they look for reasons why they could be angry at men, or why they could be angry at women, or why they could be angry at people. And often what angers us is the things that we would actually like to have in our lives. So you can be angry at a man as a woman because you want to have that man, but you just don't know how to say it because you seem to be afraid of men. And then you start being angry at them or something. It doesn't really matter what your reason is, but it should matter to you. So instead of just sitting around being angry at everyone, or just certain individuals or groups of people, you know, you should start working with that and ask yourself, why am I so angry at men? Instead of continuously talking yourself into this position where you say, I have a right to be angry. You would then ask yourself, why do you have to be righteous about your anger? Because I don't deserve your anger. No, we all deserve some form of compassion. If you can't be compassionate with yourself, because who it's ultimately actually harming your anger is yourself. Because you're torturing yourself. I mean, if you have a disposition towards men, then roughly 50% of the entire human population to you is a bunch of assholes. Which means you're gonna have a hard time feeling good about living if 50% of the human population to you are a bunch of assholes. So it also should be in your interest to work with your anger, right? It's like thinking that rain is bad weather, thinking that when it's cold it's bad weather or it's uncomfortable. So if you live in this kind of bubble that bad weather exists, then this day to you would be a reason to be miserable. And you would carry that around, and that just makes it very hard to have a nice and relaxing day, because in your mind you already feel gloomy. Instead of making most of the day, you simply feel gloomy about it. And that means if you walk through life with a disposition towards anyone, if it's, because you can carry your anger towards one person with you. You can carry your anger towards a single person with you. And that's going to keep you trapped your whole life, because you feel like that person treated you very unfair. And you're going to sit around in a state of hatred while that person actually never thinks of you. So you have to work yourself to a place where you can love them. So let's say you're a woman and your father left you, and there's a part in you that really hates that man for having left you. Then start connecting with your father on an emotional level. Start opening up to him. You don't have to meet him. You don't have to see him, because maybe he will never change. Maybe he will be like this for the rest of his life. But there is a place in yourself where you can open up to him. I have this with some women. I even have this with some people I would consider friends. And these people, they're so unable to open up to me as who I am, because they always want me to be, they want me to be less good than I am so that they can feel better about how they are. But I can't do that, right? I can't let people push me down because they are afraid of being not enough or something, right? I cannot pretend to be somebody I'm not. Yeah, I can try, but that's gonna make me feel really miserable. So I have taken the stance of simply sitting here and being in my center and loving whoever I met enough so that I simply say, I'm just gonna love you all. And that is a challenge in itself. It's a challenge to sit and love whoever you met in your life, even though they think they hate you or they don't deserve your love or whatever. You simply sit and you send them your love. And that's by connecting with them and thinking of them in a loving way. Because if all these women, that I slept with, or the women that wanted me to be something for them and it turned out that I wasn't that, if all these women sit around hating me, then I'm going to feel that hatred. That's a very terrible thing to do to a person, to just hate them all the time, because I feel that. I feel this hatred. And so what do I do with this hatred? Well, I work with that. If I feel a lot of hatred, then what do I do with it? I start loving. I try to feel where that hatred is coming from, and then I send love that way. That's all I can do. I can simply love whatever hates me. And that's a much better standpoint than to take the same position as my opposite, right? If somebody's afraid of me, then why should I be afraid of them? If somebody's afraid of me, then all I can say is, right, it's all good, right? It's all good, you know. I don't feed into your fear because you're creating this yourself. It's the glasses you're wearing that make life look like it's something, you know, to be afraid of. But I could also sit here and say, oh, it's all good, man. You know, it's all good. It's all good. And sometimes I feel like this. Like right now, I mean, this is very genuine. This is very honest. And, you know, sometimes still, yeah, you know, I get to the point where I actually look at nobody's watching this and I think, well, but I'm here, right? No, I'm here. I'm watching this. And if somebody would decide he could come in here and hear me talk, and what I'm doing is I'm holding the space. The problem that I have is how long should I hold the space for? And should I just do like a 24/7 stream, or should I keep them a bit short? I think I like to have a certain topic and then talk about it and then let it go. And I think it's a time now because I already have another topic that I want to talk about. So I can just let this topic go. And for anyone who wants to watch it, you know, have a go.